say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. All right, welcome everybody. Happy New Year. Hope you had a good Christmas.
Supervisor.
Okay. Roll call tonight. Everybody's present. The agenda is before you. Do we have any additions or deletions? Agenda? If not, they're presented to us as is, and we're down to public comment. Joe?
Hi there, Happy New Year. I'm Joe Kahn with Advanced Disposal, Arbor Hills Landfill, and I just want to inform the trustees that we are going to be doing some work, some further work on the gas collection and control system. We have these community advisory group meetings, and so there's going to be a presentation. We've invited all our neighbors and certainly are inviting you to attend. This is on Thursday evening, January 25th. Details about this are on our website at arborhills.info, and I certainly can send you those and send anybody in this room details on that. We acquired the gas system that collects gas from the landfill in February 2017. We've been hard at work for a year, and we're kind of getting toward the end of that work with a few projects left to go. So if anybody wants to learn about what we're doing, this is a good opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. What time?
7 p.m. Thursday, January 25th.
Very good.
It's at the Hilton Garden Inn in Plymouth. I'm sorry about that. If anybody wants details, you can see me after the meeting and I'll email you them, or just go to arborhills.info.
And that's right at Sheldon and
Near the on-ramp to M14.
yeah, Fort M14. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. If not,
Okay, hold it.
yeah.
I was not thinking, hold it. I got a letter here. I guess this is my time to talk about any new thing.
Sure.
Okay, I got a letter in the mail. And I guess I was one of the few that got this letter. Because when I got online to find out how many people got this letter, there was only 5 residents that got this letter. The rest were people that own businesses. And one of the people that got this letter owned a house that is no longer here because the fire department is now here. The house is gone. And it is about Kalo Construction filling in 2.36 acres of wetlands. And it was sent out by the Water Resource Division up in Jackson. So I called the guy and I go, what's the deal here with this letter? And he says, well, it's an investigation and we're only sending this letter out to people that their property adjoins Kalo. I live across the street directly, I don't adjacent to his property. And then, so it was Michelle, that she's a property owner. Shoebridge wasn't involved, and then it was a bunch of properties down Chubb Road that they're not adjacent to him, but, so I don't know how this is working. I've got a list of who was, sent this letter. And they're gonna investigate him being able to fill in 2.36 acres of wetland for his use. And I have a problem with this. And I get what he's trying to say. He wants to, lower the noise and the dust. So now we're admitting that we have noise and dust. Excuse me, but we've had noise and dust, and I get this. But and I'm trying to work with this, but it's like we're always looking at this. Today I was going across the street to get my mail, and sure as shit, here comes a truck down through there. You know, and we like put a limit on no trucks coming down through 6 miles. And it was Halo, you know. And we're like policing them constantly. Now, if we give him more property to run his business out of, are we gonna be policing him more? And why do we have to do this? To me, we're just gonna make him bigger. And what's that gonna do to our wetlands? I'm not like, I don't have a degree in this. They said, we can get online and check this out. But when I check this out, I'd have to go to school for 10 years to figure that all out. I got a packet here that there is no way I can figure that out. He's gonna move the plant, but I don't see where moving that plant's gonna make that big of a difference. Now, if he'd move it about 15 miles away, it might help me. I remember when it first started happening over there, there used to be a line of trees that went down 6 miles. And it was about so wide and so long. And when they came through and were trying to make it pretty, the first thing they said is, I don't know why he took down all those trees. Because that would have stopped some of the dust right away. Then he planted these big evergreens that don't stop any dust. Anyway, that's getting off track. I don't really want to see him get any more property over there than he already has. And I said, well, if he does get those wetlands, and he wasn't saying that was gonna happen, but it's being investigated, and these people, other people got the DNRs involved, and the fisheries, and then I got, like I said, I got a letter. I don't know if you got one here. Did you
Yeah, I
investigate?
talked to you last
Right.
week, whatever. Dell did get one in the clerk's office and
Yeah.
gave it to
And
Ann.
I guess I just like to know how the board feels as a whole about this letter. How you guys feel about this?
I don't think they've even seen the letter other than Dell.
Really?
Yeah, it just came in the end of the
I mean, how
month.
you stand on this? We've already had enough problems.
Yeah, so let's go back, and I don't want to get in a long discussion on this, but
Right.
2 years ago, or a year and a half ago,
Right.
and you were involved in this because you and I had this conversation.
Right?
And you were all for the situation, if they could take that crusher and move it back towards the railroad tracks to lessen the noise and dust and everything else. Now, again, I just said, and you told me to push that if it was gonna help the situation over there, to investigate and do it. So I haven't heard nothing on this maybe a year and a half now.
Right.
So they have done the investigating, he's paid a company, whatever, to investigate it, and now we're just hearing it. But I didn't even know, so that's going through, up in Jackson, the DEQ, they're the ones that are investigating it. So we don't, it really hasn't even come to us yet to see what it is. But if it ever did come to the township, my first reaction would be, is where's all the information that what they're saying this is gonna eliminate is gonna really help us? How is that gonna help the residents?
Well,
Is the noise thing gonna really be, a lot less if they move it over there?
What he's like saying, and it increases a stockpile, storage space. It just sounds like this is like benefiting him. It's not, he's doing it to benefit the noise.
Well, I think they would have to
and
prove it, they'd have to prove it to us that that's what they're doing,
Uh-huh.
to help them.
And like, we talked a lot about him buying a piece of Jackie's property.
Right.
I've heard a lot of rumors about buying a piece of property at Kensington. I've heard him buying a piece of property behind Paul's storage unit. I mean, there's a lot of rumors going around. I wish he'd buy a piece of property 100 miles away from here. Now I've got damn ducks flying over and birds, and my car is white and it wants to be silver. That's another problem.
Okay, thanks.
But we need to check this out.
Yeah.
And what that would do to the stream,
Right.
what that would do to the area around here.
Right,
I think we just don't need to give him any more
right.
room than he's already got for his business.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Mr.
I have a question, maybe that people that live in glass houses not necessarily throw stones. If I'm not mistaken, you've got a trucking company running onto your property?
I have one truck, sir.
That's just residential property too.
I have one truck that's been there for 25 years.
I know.
And I
Okay,
really
let's
don't
not
think
get,
that
this
it
is
does
just for
anything
public
to the
comment to address the
community.
board.
Do you
Okay.
really
Let's-
think that it
let's-
causes a lot of dust
Okay.
It's not the
and
point.
chaos in this community?
This is a
We
zoned
want to start
community.
cleaning house, let's go to every house in this community.
I agree.
Okay, all right, let's go. Anybody else, so we can
I
move on
knew
to our
you were
agenda?
gonna do that.
Yes, Dan.
I would like to, on behalf of the residents, thank Sherry for what a beautiful spread she puts on.
She does, doesn't she?
She doesn't get enough credit.
Except she's going to Florida in February, so, and for about, till back 1st of May, so I don't, yeah, so,
Maybe Tim Hortons then?
yeah, probably. We appreciate her, I appreciate her, so, did you hear that, Butch?
I heard it.
Okay, moving on down, Mr. Wensley, to the consent agenda.
Mr. Supervisor, I move that Salem Township approve the following consent agenda items. We have the minutes of last month's December 12th regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. We have disbursements for December out of the general fund of $162,019. That's checks 27,203 through 27,270. We had a payroll of $55,599.06, Paycor of $206.64. Out of the sewer fund, we had disbursements of $18,888.68, checks 2024 through 2027. And escrow disbursements, $13,940.25. That's checks 1735 through 1740. So for the month of January, these new invoices, we have out of the general fund, $26,043.96. Invoices out of the sewer fund will be $5,053, and invoices out of the escrow fund of only $1,055. So do we have a second?
All second. Okay, John seconds it. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. All right, moving down to business items. Under financial, budget amendments. Mr. Winslow.
All right, let me organize here. All right, we have a motion to move that Salem Township approve 4 different cost center budget amendments for this current fiscal year. In the elections department, for election workers and employees that work for elections, our elections, we had a 0 budget, but we need to revise that to $1,100. In the same department in elections, we have printing and publishing a budget of $500. We need a revised budget of $2,400. In the zoning board of appeals line item for consulting fees, we didn't budget anything. We had 0, and we need to revise that to $10,000. And fringe benefits and insurance, we have a line item called workers' compensation. The budget was $20,000, and the revised budget needs to be $38,000. So these total $31,000, and these will be charged to the contingency fund. Do you have a second on
We
that?
have a second on this?
I'll second it. With a question.
Sure.
Okay, so can you explain to us on the insurance, workman's comp, I think that was the biggest increase.
Right.
These are for firefighters, I believe,
Yes,
and the employees.
the
not-
runs that the firefighters, it's based upon their salaries and their amount of money that they earn. So the more runs we have, we basically pay kind of like an estimated amount each year, and then the workers' compensation MML comes in, does an audit, and then we get charged more for the actual payroll that's paid out. And so, of course, there was, last year was a busy year, and we had a lot more than we were thinking, so there was additional $18,000 that we needed to put into the workers' comp budget.
Just so it's clear, it's not insurance or insurance that's going to the board
Correct.
or anybody like that, so.
It's all workers' comp.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. Could Mr. Winsley elaborate on the zoning board of appeals, which consultant is involved with the ZBA this year?
It would be Carlisle Wortman, as far as I,
Right. I believe Ed had some issues on some of the, I can't remember all the, but we've had quite a bit of zoning board of appeal, the public coming in.
I don't know the specifics of those appeals, maybe you guys can speak of it. Remember?
That's something where Paul's involved in it?
Right,
From Carlisle?
right. But didn't you do some work on some of the, I can't even remember
Well,
what they were.
there's been some, when Paul contacts me, we,
Right.
discuss a certain issue, but I don't know how that breaks down with regard to the appeal.
Okay. Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. All right, so there's not much on the agenda tonight, other than our reports now that are submitted, treasurer's report, and we're down to fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. As Mr. Winsley alluded to, last year was our second highest number of runs we've ever had. I think we were 5 short of the record, so we had a fairly busy last year, which is, shows in some of the numbers in a number of ways. This last month, we had a structure fire on Pontiac Trail. Gentleman's barn or garage was completely on fire when it was noticed. There was not a whole lot saved there. However, it did not go to the next structures, which was really good. And we got good support from our neighbors as well as for tankers, water, and manpower. So that went really well. And then if anybody was out this morning, we were really busy. Icy roads, we got a lot of curves in here, and we get a lot of through traffic. And we had a rollover and 3 cars in the ditch in this last, I'd say since Christmas, we've been fairly steady with some pretty bad weather, and the roads have been challenging for some of the vehicles. Ice doesn't work well. So we ask that you slow down, and generally the people that need to hear that aren't in this room. They generally tend to be kind of first-time drivers, and they tend to have very upset parents when they show up at the scene, including one, I think, at your road this morning as well. So thankfully, they didn't take the fence out. That's a normal course of action. So again, we're supposed to get some icy rain tonight, so we ask folks just to be careful and watch it. Generally, it's transient.
Mr. Chief, Mr. Supervisor, do we know how many calls we had this morning or for the whole day for incidents related to accidents, road issues? And do we have any confirmation that our county road commission even salted any of our roads this morning?
They did come out after you talked to me, I seen them come by. Maybe they pulled that one out of the ditch, so I was saying, It's probably 10, I don't know, what time did you call me, remember? Just after that, I thought.
8:30 I called you.
Yeah, I would say it was more like 9:30 or so, I seen one go by.
There was black ice all the way to
Yeah.
7 mile from Dixboro to where that accident was this morning. I mean, it was greasy. You really didn't know it was there.
Right, 8 and Chubb was real bad, that's where a big,
Yeah, we had to roll
accident-
over at 5 mile, or 8 mile between Chubb and Napier. Luckily, she didn't hit the tree too hard in the electrical pole and take it out, but it was black ice, very, very much black ice this morning.
Did we get any feedback, Mr. Supervisor, in your attempts to touch base with those folks as to
No, it's just
why there was a delay in application of salt?
No,
I can tell you from the radio traffic that we were not unique. There were a number of rollover accidents across the county, not just in our jurisdiction. And we could hear that on our fire and police radio, so we were not unique in that endeavor, that it was just isolated to Salem. But to that point, we certainly didn't see a salt truck in the morning.
And going back to my original question, which I got lost with all the subsequent questions, was how many calls for assistance did we have this morning?
We had
If you
four,
happen to know.
4 vehicles, 1 medical, and a couple accidents that weren't reported to us, because what we call property damage accidents, where they don't call the fire department, they call the police, and they get out there when they get out there.
So there were 7 or 8 altogether.
I don't know the exact number, but I know we got at least 4 for car accidents. And it was fairly busy too, through our jurisdiction. And not to, I think Monday was even bad too. We got lucky in the matter of the fact that Plymouth had a truck versus truck on M14, which shut down the freeway going westbound, so it was icy that day, but I think because the freeway was shut down, we didn't suffer any of the consequences of it.
okay.
So I just wanted to say that I put in our board packet a specification we've been working on our engine. It's, I put a single sheet there because it's 165 pages of everything that you could think of down to the last nut and bolt for a fire engine. In the spec, it's a pre-spec, it's in draft form. The hope would be that we could get this out on the street, get the bids back, and then bring that to the board for approval if they're satisfied with the cost and what the bids come back at. What I'm looking for, whatever we do, you're looking at 12 to 18 months now, once the contract is over, before we even see the vehicle, because the fire apparatus building, because that's far behind in the build design. So whatever we do, it's going to be probably a year to a year and a half before we even see that vehicle. So we need to kind of get this process going down the road. I was hoping the board would, had a chance, I emailed this to everybody, it's in the board packet, it's in draft form. We worked really hard with the team within the department and technical experts to put this together. We tried to take the existing apparatus that's 23 years old and bring it up to modern standards for safety. And you'll find that we're probably good with the design, getting more space and the ability to carry more equipment. And of course, think of a car that you got 25 years ago and think of a car that you bought today, what would be the changes, and that's what we're looking at from the fire apparatus.
Chief, what's your expectation of cost for this vehicle?
So just the vehicle, I'm probably looking around 500,000. That's about the rate of an engine. And then there's an attachment that we ask for additional equipment, and those would be quoted on a per line basis, and it would be up to us if we accept it or not accept it, those extra items. And those would be, again, replacing some of our equipment that's approximately 25 years old.
So maybe set aside, you're thinking setting aside about 550,000, or are you thinking?
I would think so. We put the spec in there, and you never know where the bid process is going to go. And this is because it's so detailed, every person that bids on it kind of tweaks it a bit and say, well, we've got this product, not quite what you said in your spec, we will accept it. Do you think it's equivalent or not? And then there's a price with that. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. So our estimates are, by the design of this, around 500,000. We've tried to put everything that we could think of in there. I don't see any major surprises when someone comes and say, well, we missed that. That's not going to happen because the specification goes through a computer program in the design. So it's not like this was made from the beginning, first time ever.
Chief, I got some major questions, because
Sure.
I did sit down for a couple hours and go through these complete spec. And I guess I started highlighting some of them, and was like you had specified it had to be PPG paint. I guess I'm really kind of coming back here and starting saying, we even came down to the front springs had to be so wide and so many leaves.
Right.
I guess really what I'm really kind of coming from, because this is kind of some of my overall ways of doing business. Are you specifying a certain truck? Are you going out and simulating a truck? Or are you allowing this to go out to bid where you can get different vehicle manufacturers coming back in? Or are you very narrowing this down to what
We're absolutely trying not to do that. But if you don't specify to the detail, then the contractor or the bidder doesn't have the opportunity to say, well, this is our equivalent. So in that spec, unless they take exception for the entire specification, which is not allowed, they can substitute any and all parts that are in there. So if they say, you know, we can't do PPG red 586, we can do whatever paint 558, same color, as long as they can prove that, it's acceptable. So the spec is detailed that much so that we get exactly what we want or equivalent to it. And there's allowed in the spec for them to do that. And there's an expectation, like we did with the tanker, that there will be exceptions with everybody's bid. Because even the person who designed it, we changed some of their specifications because we wanted it in a certain fashion. So there will be exceptions with every bid that we get.
But I guess where I'm really trying to come from here is if you put it over restrictive, then you may be eliminating some suppliers that other people have something else.
We were careful not to do that. We were very cognizant of that. Matter of fact, the guy who put this together put some things in there that we pulled out of there that I thought were not as germane to the bid. For example, you have to have 50 employees at your service center and they have to be within so many miles of our township. I was like, no, that's way, I know that this vendor can do it, but not other ones. That was pulled out. So I was very careful to go through there and pull the things out that were not important to the vehicle and the operation that we're trying to meet. So I think what I'd like to do though is maybe after the board meeting, and you and I can go through these. It's still in draft form, and if there's any questions that you have, we can modify. Again, this would go out to the street for bid. Bid comes back, that's our cut deadline that we have to have everything right. This is what we're proposing. Vendors are gonna come back and say, yeah, we can meet this, but no, here, yes, here. We accept it now. So we were very cognizant of making sure that we didn't exclude folks. One of the big things that was excluded was foreign manufacturing.
Yeah, I know.
So that's what we did with our tanker. But other than that, it says a Spartan chassis. That doesn't mean someone from Kenworth or whatever else chassis can't substitute that. We just have a starting point to say, this is what we want.
Okay.
Just a couple of questions. Who did you tell me worked in the fire department on these things?
So Ryan Roselli and myself were the primary drivers on this. Last time it was Ryan Roselli, myself, and Eddie Warhoff. Of course, Eddie's retired. We didn't have the services of him.
Okay. And did you give it to Ann to put it on the website, all the specs yet? or-
I've sent everything to her electronic. It's in the board packet. I will check to see if she put it online because it's.
Just want to make sure it's on there.
The only thing that'll probably need to be held in confidence is until the details of what the time frame is for bidding and when we want it back, because that needs to be released to the vendors all at the same time so they don't get a head start on one over another. But other than that, specs are open discussion.
So, board members, if you remember back when
we first took office, we looked at, our fire equipment, and really, it just really needed some changing, upgrading. We were spending a ton of money in repairs and stuff. I mean, it just, in the very beginning, it was kind of, I don't know if you remember, but it just seemed to be, every month it seemed to be something else. So, I mean, the tanker was just definitely something that needed to be done. I think if you walk to the fire department and you look at engine 902, that it's time to replace this. And I think from all the little vehicles that we've replaced besides the tanker, getting them on a rotated basis so that we don't have one big fleet that needs to be replaced at the same time. So I was kind of hoping that, my personal preference, that we would have had this on order last year. I tried to tell the fire department that to look at their budget and try to work as hard as your budget, and then whatever, I don't know what you were, came in under budget last year. And we just want to be able to take that, reinvest it into the fire equipment. And so that's just my thoughts on it. And I think that we need to either make a decision on going out for bid on this and not waste time on it. I think we need to get it out there and get this vehicle on order if we can come to an agreement what we need. So I would suggest we either make a motion, or we need more time to look at it, to at least to go out for bid on it, or I haven't put a motion together on it, but I'm just asking the board, do we want to wait till next month to come, or do we want to make a motion to do that?
Just as in word of support of what you're talking about, Gary, is that in the last process, every year they allocated so many dollars in the budget, and also, it was kind of gradually paid over for umpteen years it was there. Well, when it come time for it, we couldn't write that off on the budget. The budget had to be done in that year, so all that other stuff that we did earlier was for naught. There was no money ever set aside for this, so it basically came out of the fund. So where I'm really coming from here is, this needs to be, we just need to pony up and do it. Not try to stretch this over years and years and years of trying to generate money for it. I'm with Gary. I think this needs to be done soon, but I am not in favor of stretching this over payments and so much a year trying to put money towards it. It's coming out of the same pot anyway, so what difference does it make?
I was hoping I could also get maybe a board member who has some engineering background that would be interested in reading 175 pages of specifications and giving some wonderful comments back and feel comfortable to give feedback to the board that they are comfortable
got that
with
right here.
specification. Maybe somebody.
I volunteer them.
Well, on page,
But I think that's important. There is a lot of detail in here, and quite honestly, Ryan, with his background in mechanics and powertrain and stuff, there's some stuff that I've deferred to him, that like brake horsepower and wheels, and that's his wheelhouse. I don't even pretend to say that I know everything about those things, but we worked as a team, and the roads that we take this apparatus, which is our second most busiest apparatus, are not kind to a vehicle that hauls around 1,000 gallons of water and drives very fast to try to get to a scene. This is our primary vehicle for a structure firefighter. It's our backup for a medical response. This new vehicle, I'm really happy to say, will have foam, so we'll be able to be much more effective with the fire suppression with the push of a button. It has the capability to apply foam, where if we do it in our current, we have to put a bucket on the ground, we have to connect into our hoses, and we have to induct out of the hoses to provide foam on a structure firefighter. Again, you're talking something 25 years old versus modern technology, more computer controlled, more safety devices. Our resisting doesn't have airbags, doesn't have a lot of the safety features that a 2018 vehicle would have. So really, as the supervisor said, we don't want to be in a situation where you're buying 4 of these vehicles all at once because they all die. We need to stagger this out. And this is part of that long-term strategy, to put this in a process of not having to buy a vehicle, all 4 vehicles at once.
Okay. Anything else? So do you, yes.
Just one question regarding the estimated cost. If my memory is correct, the last vehicle we purchased was just a little over 400,000.
No, 150.
Was it 450?
No, it was over 5 and we got a 10% reduction because we paid for it up front.
But that was with the loose equipment too.
Yes.
The apparatus was under,
Yes.
around 450s, 470.
It's 470.
Okay. He's the one. Right, Jefferson.
So are there any features on this proposed vehicle that are significantly different where the cost is going to
Well,
be higher? Or are we saying that it's really pretty much the same and we got a discount because we paid cash?
Well, I'm hoping we're gonna get a discount when you pay cash. It's a very different vehicle, so this has same type of pump, but now we're having a master screen, which is a nozzle that's installed right on the truck that provides, it's a big tank versus now we've got only 1,000 tank, but now we're putting a phone system in with computer controls. So it's in the same class, but it's a full different design. It's not an apple to apple comparison.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would just recommend, or if I can make a motion to authorize the chief to start the process of doing the bid process. How many, last time, how many places did we?
3 or 4 we finally got bids from. 3. We would, again, send them to all the vendors that we did before, and we're gonna put it on a nationwide web for government purchases. Again, try to get as much competition as we can. It's kind of like, there's not that many truck manufacturers like the fire trucks.
Okay, so that's my motion. I'll second that.
Real quick
Yes.
question, will 902 stand for us? Will that stay on, or will you eventually?
We don't have any place to store, so I would recommend, so that's the other
And
reason
what
we
kind
want
of
to sell it.
value if you were to sell?
We're gonna get some value back on this, not a lot. And this is not like the 30-year-old tanker that was kind of being held together by Band-Aids. I don't know how much we would get for this, but this vehicle does have some residual value in it. And that's another reason to kind of sell it now, before the wheels fall off.
Okay.
So are you calling this an engine pumper?
Yes, because it fills both, it has the capability to provide, so a pumper would be something like if there were hydrants where we could tap into a hydrant, boost the power on the water supply and feed other lines. And this also would be an attack engine where it could be a first tube engine and attack a fire and run right from it. So it does a dual purpose.
Okay. So we have a second on this?
Who was the second?
Mr. Zanders.
No.
Right.
Dale? Okay.
And the motion is to put it up for bids.
Right.
Yeah, motion to authorize the chief to start the bidding process to spec and purchase the engine pumper.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is passed.
Thank you.
Okay, you all set? All done? Anything else?
If I could just do my soapbox. We had a call for a structure fire, which turned out to be someone burning their Christmas tree. But it was, we have these rural roads that are very, back in the woods, if you will. And they did not put a sign at the road to let us know where the road is. So we're encouraging those folks who have these long roads that go in the back to put some type of reflective sign when we're going out like tonight, where it's very hard to see. Minutes count, and we don't like to be driving back and forth in the street trying to find your address. So the green signs, and unfortunately, the people that I need to tell this to are not here. The green signs and the reflective sign, if you have a private street, the county does sell those. Helps us immensely in trying to find your address in times of not only us, police, and the ambulance services. So we did have a call at Dixboro. We were very challenged to find the road. Thank you. That's awesome.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, moving on down to board discussion. As we talked last month about the grant that has been awarded to Salem Township in the amount of $10 million for infrastructure over in the USD. The Township Attorney, Mr. Plato, and myself met with the Michigan Economical Development Corporation on Thursday, and went in with questions, and came out, and it's just about what, we can't find any strings that are attached to this, other than the money's come. It's not like a typical grant. I'm going to let Mr. Plato kind of explain most of it. But, you know, just being a simple person, you know, just asking, one of my biggest fears is if you have the sewer and you start the sewer line and the USD going to Ypsilanti, and let's say they give you, so to start, they give us $5 million, so we can put it in the bank. We have till 2020 to use the $10 million. And let's say we end up, say they start building the sewer, and let's say there's $4 million in the project, and then it collapses, not the sewer line, but let's say it collapses the economy, or for whatever reason it doesn't happen. The township does not have to pay that money back. It used to be more or less, let's say it costs $4 million, we're in that project, and there's $1 million left in the bank, $1 million, we'd have to pay the $1 million back to the state. So it's interesting. It's just it's there, and it's the township's responsibility mainly is that we have to note everything that comes in as far as this project is. It can only be dedicated for sewer and water utilities in the USD, and then it has to be documented as such as the bills go to the state to make sure that it's everything. In other words, we can't be going on vacation with it or doing other things with it. So, but it's I actually expected that we would be there for a long time, but it was pretty amazing of how simple this grant is and the strings that are not attached to it. And from there, I'll turn it over to Mr. Blake.
Stole most of my fire.
I'm sorry. I make mine simple. Yours is complicated.
As Supervisor Whitaker mentioned, last Thursday we went and met with the MEDC in Lansing. It really was a very candid and forthright meeting where they were willing to answer any questions we had very openly. And we confirmed with them that the $10 million grant we have was a legislative appropriation that was put together by the state as part of the state's budget last July. The money was specifically, the $10 million is earmarked for Salem Township for us to use for infrastructure in the urban service district. It's almost like a gift. So when we met with them, we had a number of questions we wanted to answer, so we feel comfortable going forward with this. Many of the questions that the board members have raised and you've raised here at the meetings were questions that we presented to them so we could get direct answers from them. So the first one, of course, is, as Supervisor Whitaker has mentioned, is what is our obligation to pay back part or all of this grant if we start to use it? And the answer was we're only obligated to pay back what we haven't used, but we haven't spent so far on the grant. So if we put $3 million into the development, into the project for the infrastructure, and for some reason everything falls apart and construction stops, we don't have to pay that money back if we've used it, we've spent. The only thing we'd have to give back is if we still have some left over in the bank of the $5 million that they're going to give us up front, then of course we'd have to give that back if we haven't spent. But that's really the only stipulation on it, is to give back what we haven't spent. The only other condition on it is that the money can only be used to build, design infrastructure in the urban service district. So as long as we're using it for that purpose, Mr. Whitaker and I are using it to buy yacht, to take out for the summer, whatever, then we're fine, as long as we're just using it to build the infrastructure in the urban service district. That's really the only stipulation on it. We asked them what's the time frame for spending the money, and they said we actually have until August of 2021. So we have 3.5 years from now until we have to spend the money. So we said, candidly, we said, well, if we take our $5 million out, can we let that sit in the bank for 2 years if nothing happens? And they said, yeah, that's not a problem. The only stipulation is, when it comes to August 2021, if we haven't spent the money, then of course we have to give back anything we haven't spent. And that $10 million grant will no longer be available after August 2021. So that's the only stipulation, that the money has to be used before that date, or it's no longer going to be available. The process for drawing the grant, they said we can take it in installments, if we wanted, quarterly installments or whatever. We asked if we could take the whole $10 million up front. They said, no, we can't do that. But what we can do, we can take $5 million up front, put it in a separate account in the township and spend it as we need it. And then once that money's spent, they said when we get within $100,000 of spending that $5 million, we can submit invoices, for going forward, and then they'll give us the other $5 million. So basically, we'll get it in 2 payments, one up front to be spent as we proceed, and one as the project is somewhere halfway along. The only thing we need to do, we don't have to provide them with actual proof that we paid money out. We only have to provide them with invoices. So when we get an invoice for construction or design work, engineering work that's been completed, we'll just submit that and then take money out of the fund we've set aside with $5 million and pay those invoices. That's all the state is only requiring that we give them periodic invoices so that they know that we're spending the money as it's supposed to be spent. We asked them, we said, well, we had questions from some residents, that these grants always have conditions on them. And that's true if it's like a federal grant. It's money coming from the federal government. There'll be a lot of stipulations on it, a lot of conditions. This is not a federal grant. It has nothing to do with federal money. It's not a strategic fund grant, which also has stipulations. A strategic fund grant would require that in the urban service district, we have to guarantee that there are going to be so many jobs generated or some other economic growth. This grant doesn't have those stipulations. We don't have to meet any of those criteria. Like I said, the only criteria we have to meet, again, is that the money has to be used to put in the water and sewer in the urban service district. And the only other condition is it has to be spent by August 2021. So that's essentially the 2 conditions on the grant. It's a great opportunity for Salem Township to go forward and use the state's money to develop the USD. And if anybody has any questions, I'm sure we'll be happy to answer them.
Well, let me just say, so saying all that, I think the next question that a lot of us have, once we take, let's say, the $5 million, what I heard from our residents last month was, what skin in the game does the developer have? So that's where we don't know yet. And I think the sewer, our engineers estimated it being at 13 million to complete the sewer. And if they decide to start the sewer, let's say it's the 13 million for that, they need to have the skin in the game to find that other 2.5, 3 million to make that sewer happen. And I think that's kind of what we're all, at least that's what I'm thinking. We have to have that commitment. Now, I'm thinking, if you correct me if I'm wrong, I think we can take the 5 million and keep it, but we can do design work from the engineering standpoint, but not let them put a shovel in the ground until we have the funding for that sewer. So then you have to ask yourself the question that, what happens if it does fail, and, at least Salem Township will own a sewer going to Yucca that would be free of charge, so to the township, and we would own the sewer line. So, that's where we don't know yet what they're saying, but I think we have to put some demands on them.
But those demands would come from the township. The state and the MEDC has not said, we need to know where all the funding is coming from to build the entire infrastructure. It's up to the township to tell the developers, okay, we have $10 million, we know it's going to be $13 million to put the sewer in, where's the other $3 million coming from? And we're going to require that they have that money, that we know where that money's coming from before we start the actual construction of the sewer. That's a stipulation the township's going to put on the developers.
All right, so before we go to the public, any questions from board members?
No, just one other thing I forgot to mention. The next step will be, the MEDC will provide me with a contract, which is fairly standard form. And we'll review that. We should have that well before the next board meeting. So anticipate that in February, I'll come before the board with the agreement that we'll be asking the board to approve.
Well, the question that I have, Gary, is that it's been estimated that the engineering costs will run upwards of $1 million. Will this be used to fund that engineering cost as well?
Yes.
And now that 13, 14 million or whatever you say, does that also include engineering costs? Or is that just construction costs?
The initial engineering costs have to do with both the water and sewer engineering. So once that's completed, we can use the grant money for that, because that's part of, that's obviously part of the construction and design of the infrastructure. So at that point, then after that, it would begin going 100% toward the sewer plant.
That's kind of the issue that I'm having. I like what Supervisor had to say here is that we're separating water from the sewer. They can be independent projects. Being that if anything failed, we have a sewer system which we can use here. But the water system, we couldn't, if it failed, we wouldn't have any need for it outside of maybe whoever developer would come in later down the line. So I guess what I'm kind of coming back here saying is that we need to have some kind of agreement with Showstack on this engineering cost. I'm kind of a little bit reticent of just using this all in engineering costs. It can be cycled into water and sewer, and because I think our main purpose here of looking at the sewer system only.
Well, we can certainly direct Stantec to go forward only with the sewer design. I mean, those are going to be designed separately. I think a good deal of the design work has already been done. Just getting down to the details at this point. And at some point, like I said, we don't know when construction is actually going to begin. We've got 3.5 years now to get that completed. But in the meantime, we're hoping that the developers will come up with the additional $11 million to do the water project also. We'd like to get everything done concurrently if possible.
Because concurrent with this, we do have the SAW grant, and part of that SAW grant is running of the sewer down to the USD. And so what I'm trying to get my arms around is how much can that SAW grant intertwine with the other grant, and I'm kind of getting lost in the weeds here as to how we coordinate these.
Well, I think the SAW grant is separate. I mean, that's something that is for the sewer and the handle here. And again, we should, not change separate. When are we supposed to get that report on the sewer in the hamlet, where we can look and see where the problems are at?
We're still waiting on the others.
So, I mean, that's, eventually it would be nice to get out of the wastewater treatment plant, but that's.
Yeah, but I mean, because I know that part of the sewer, part of the SAW grant was engineering study of running it down to the USD.
Right.
And so that's where I'm kind of coming from here is how do we coordinate this kind of stuff?
Well, I think this grant from Michigan can only be used for the sewer and water and engineering for update. We can't use it for anything else.
And just for everybody's information, we did get bills for $60,000 for the SAW grant, and I turned it over to the state, and within 5 days I had $57,000 back in the account. So it's working out very, very well, very quickly.
I have a question for you. The engineering for the sewer, when it comes up Godfredson Road, which is where it's coming up from Ypsilanti, coming in here, does the engineering project, the engineering services, in a sense, just bring it right to the border of the USD, or is Stantec engineering their actual roads in the development?
My understanding is Stantec is going to design, number one, the pipe size up, it has to be long enough to service any future development of the service.
Right.
So my understanding is they're going to bring it in, not just to the border, but they're going to run certain infrastructure within the USD that will be able to reach out and branch out to different developments.
Okay, so we're not going to be paying Stantec to engineer the roads in his development?
No.
Okay.
No. Within each development, it will be up to the developer to the cost for the sewer system in that development.
That would be the main sewer coming in, and they would tie into that for each development.
Okay.
I got a quick question, correct me if I'm wrong. Forget about the $10 million grant, that's, it's great, but if I recall, we had an agreement with the developers that they would pay initially for the cost of the infrastructure, but now we're guessing where this extra $3 million is gonna come from. It should be their obligation regardless. I mean.
Right, and that's what we're
Yeah,
saying.
it is our obligation.
Yeah, we, like, I guess where the slippery slope is, we can't allow them to have any, what do you call it? I forget what the attorneys call it, but.
Vested interest in.
Right, by letting them start it without paying for it up front.
Right. Okay.
So, we don't care how they do it, they have to come up with that money before, otherwise the money's gonna sit there and, we can do the engineering, because they're not putting any, shovels in the ground, but, they can't, you gotta have the money to get the job complete.
In place.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
On that specific point, Mr. Supervisor, what does our agreement with the developer state regarding to costs for this endeavor? Are the engineering costs considered a separate item that can be invested prior to them showing us their financial plan? My understanding is that the financial plan has to be in place before anything is commenced. And I guess I'd like to have a review of that document to share with us next month prior to us stamping our approval on running forward with the grant process.
That's true, there is a date specific, I don't recall exactly what that date is, maybe January of 2019, where they have to come forward and have a specific plan that the township approves for financing both the water and sewer infrastructure.
Okay, anything else from the board?
Yeah, is this something we're only expecting Showstack to pay for, or are we going to be letting all the other developers in the area know that this is where we're at?
Right.
And this is how much is still needed?
There was a gang of four, I don't know if there's still a gang of four.
Maybe not.
But, I think 4 years ago, we met with them, and they were, talking about it, so, they need to be talking now, that's what we told them. So these are major guys who own some property in that area that need to figure out how to combine their monies together.
Because I know in Lyon Township, several years ago, 3 developers, I think, went together and they paid it.
There's still this, as we talked about last week, or, which we kind of said it's not gonna happen, can the township bond? And they're still trying to push that, and I think we've all said that that's not, we're not doing that because it leaves us at risk if it doesn't go. So, if they want it, they're gonna have to put it in, and that's where we're at. All right, anybody else from the board here? All right, anybody public? Bonnie?
You mentioned you're going to get $5 million at one shot and put it in the bank. And then if you don't spend it all, you have to give back what you didn't spend. What happens to the interest on that money? That money's got to make interest.
Keep it.
So much better, yeah.
There goes your yacht, I blew that.
Yeah, we can. I mean, we can put it into account and, but it needs to be something safe.
But when it makes interest, you have to give that interest back to
No.
the state because you didn't spend it all.
No, no,
That's what I want to
no.
We gotta give you my account number.
Yes, Bob?
If this thing, let's say it goes to, and Showstack falls on their face, aren't we paying something to guarantee capacity? Will that capacity always be there?
Well, but we are, right now, we're paying that, it's like, what, 21,000?
21,000 for the first 3 years.
To hold the capacity for the next 3 years, but again, we can drop that if it, you know, if they fall out, we can say, well, we're not, I mean, that's the problem, the risk that we fail, and that's why we put that to them to have them pay that, because with everything else moving around us, we don't want to be in the position where we have to do another wastewater treatment plant and not have the capacity, because it's all being eaten up by, you know, Plymouth and Northville and all their expansion that's going on. And so this is secured. They've agreed to pay the 21,000 for the capacity. And once again, it's only the capacity for the USD, and it won't be able to expand from there. It's going to be sized just right. The 1,400 acres, I forget what the amount, the volume is, but it's just, I mean, the people who are across North Territorial, you know, we're already getting calls saying, hey, how can you get, you know, that I think our town has said, look, we don't want the sprawl. You know, this is in the master plan, it's been there forever, saying if stuff is gonna be developed, it's gonna be in that area with public sewer and water. But the only thing I think we really need to, you know, I'm not talking about negotiating or whatever we need to do, but we just wanna make sure it's done right. Because if you get into these spinning matches with developers, and we've seen it, how many exits you get off of, and it's a hodgepodge mess. So we need to have our planner, which he is doing, put it together and say, this is what we want it to look like. This is the gateway to Salem, and we want this to be a nice approach, and it will be some kind of a tax base for us in the future. So, yeah, and that's what I think we really have to, not only as a board, but as a community, put our heads together and say, look, if this is gonna come, let's make sure we get this done the right way. So, Dan?
I think the discussion was tonight that the focus of the $10 million would be directed toward bringing in a sewer system. Okay, now we've got the other issue of bringing in water. And at the last meeting, there was discussion about a possible grant becoming available next year.
Yeah, it might even be before that.
Yeah.
It might even be before that, don't be surprised.
Oh, okay, because I was thinking then that could probably go toward the water, I'm thinking.
I wish I had the political clout somewhere, you know, whatever, just to
Yeah.
say, hey, I need,
But you could just about
I need $1 million to help
You
me.
can kind of see the puzzle coming together, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know, but I think you guys are doing a great job.
Well, it's upon us, and we gotta, you know, I still say, and this is not to bring up about the past, this is not it's not, I'm just saying, we knew what happened before on something simple about shovel-ready projects, and the township ended having to give them $250,000 because we weren't cooperative. I mean, it just, that doesn't make sense to me. We should, whatever, you know, people don't like them, or they don't like us, but we gotta work together and figure this out, so that we're not getting sued, and we're not, you know, we just wanna get something nice there, that we all can be proud of. Even though I don't live there, I want it to be something first class. Yes?
Is there intention to build a new fire station over in that area?
Yeah, well, we own the property there across from Carl's, and that's kind of been always the intent, to have something over there eventually.
Could we take the grant, maybe put a hydrant and say that the fire station was part of the water system?
You're already getting a new truck, don't be asking. But it's exciting times for the township, I think. I think, you know, we talked about the hamlet, you know, that's on the table and stuff. They talked about moving some of the wires, what it's gonna cost, put some street lighting up, kind of give the hamlet a facelift. Getting Chubb Road paved, we should have some information by the end of the month here, hopefully. And then that, I just think the projects will just kind of give us a little facelift around here that will look nice. And most people you talk to around here are pretty encouraged by that, I think, to see something look nice. All right, anything else? Any other comments?
Gary?
How are you, sir?
Good.
Okay.
Who did the work on applying for this grant?
The developer did. I mean, there's no secret to that.
Okay.
You know, they're political.
They're applying for the second one too.
Yeah.
Okay, the reason I was asking is just,
Yeah.
you know, that there's a lot of these grants out there, and I don't know if the township's actively pursuing.
Yeah, just like the SAW grant that, you know, that we applied for and got to do the studies of the Hamlet sewer, which has been, is having some issues and why we need to find out what it is. And so, but there's a lot of strings attached to that. You know, it's just not like this kind of a grant, so. But, you know, there's a lot of grants out there. I think we received some grants for the fire department or
We're applying for some this year.
right, so.
I guess what I was thinking was, is there someone in the township who's kind of working on maybe actively seeking out some of these grants for different projects? Or it's just kind of, if they come along, we...
Yeah, you know, our consultants kind of point us to when there is a grant money available. That's kind of how we got into this SAW grant thing, to look at our sewer. But there are other avenues to look at. So.
Larger cities and counties employ people to, that's their job, full-time, or grant writers and things, but most local townships don't have anybody that's their job.
I think one, I interrupt you, but our over in Ann Arbor Township, Mike Moran, he's really good at it. I mean, if you look, he's the supervisor over there, but I think he's kind of retired, he does. But he applies for a lot and receives a lot, so. I maybe need to retire. Yes, sir.
In my past life, I was pretty active in
Your
securing...
past life?
My past work life. It's very active in securing a lot of federal grants, okay, multi-million-dollar grants.
There's our man right there.
And the grant community, there's a whole community, a whole network in Washington that does nothing but this, okay? And there's a lot of strings attached to those grants. I just wanted to make that point.
Right.
They make it pretty complicated. A lot of the grant money goes towards salaries of different people that the government has involved with. And if you don't employ them, you don't get the grant.
Right. And that's why this one really surprises me. I can't, it's just kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, this is really simple. Yeah, it is. It's not like any grants I've been
No.
involved with.
All right, anybody else have anything? I do want to make one comment before, let's see, where are we at on the agenda? Public comment? Any more public comment? Yes.
Where does the township stand on the Leo Joe lawsuit, Gary?
Ed?
There has been a motion for summary judgment that's been filed, that's pending. The court has indicated that they are going to decide that motion without any oral argument. That could mean this month, it could mean 9 months down the road, we don't know. The court, the case is pending in front of the chief judge in the Eastern District of Michigan. She tends to kind of be behind on her docket, so we don't know how long it's going to take her to decide that motion. The case is actually up for trial in March, but it's very doubtful that the trial date will go because of pending. If there's a motion for summary judgment pending, the trial can't proceed unless that motion is decided. So that's basically where it stands. We're kind of in limbo right now, just waiting for a decision on the motion.
Okay, Bob?
The Chubb Road paving project that we have would alleviate a lot of the dust that comes off that road in the surrounding territory. And you said that's coming right along?
I'm sorry, what?
You said that the Chubb Road project is...
Yeah, the engineers are back on it. They're doing the right-of-ways to see what, if they're going to infringe on it, where they have to buy some rights or whatever. They're looking at that, and then the cable utilities and stuff like that that are on there that might have what it's going to cost to do that. So that's kind of what's left on it, then they will let us know.
So basically, if that does go through, that'll alleviate most of the dust on that, or off that road.
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, with the landfill's doing a lot, improving their site, and there's some, you know, that whole corner down there. The ambition would be is to get that Chubb Road's going through to 5 Mile. And I think most people will use that, to be honest, instead of going down towards the landfill, kind of eliminate some of that, so.
Also, one thing that I think the residents don't realize, that the only thing that you really banned on 6 Mile was the gravel trains. A short double can carry almost as much as a gravel train, but it's legal on 6 Mile. So if you see something other than a gravel train, then that's basically legal.
Right, so that's where people are getting,
They
not
don't
to say that we
understand.
haven't seen it, because they just issued a bunch of tickets.
Right.
I talked to the sheriff about it, and, you know, they've been coming up 5 Mile and Salem Road, and, but you gotta really look at the truck when one's
Right.
coming through the hamlet. If it's, like a dump truck that's fixed with, they're allowed, but the fifth wheel is not.
I don't think most people know that it has something to do with the fifth wheel.
Right.
They don't even know what a fifth wheel is.
Yeah, you're right.
But, you know, we wanna, you know, cut down the traffic, which it has, and that's been the goal.
And
Okay.
also, the traffic, the speed limit things.
Yeah, and they said by spring, they should have the prices for us to put them up, and we want to put them up. But I think that would be a good plus to have.
Glad you guys thought of that.
Right. All right, anybody else? Okay, so one last thing. So we received a nice check in the mail for a refund from the road commission. And some of this is, as you know, we spent close to $1 million this year with road improvements, most to our local roads. And then, of course, the culverts, which cost a lot of money. Dale, before I read any of these, we didn't get any, did we know what the prices were on the culverts? Did they?
No.
Yeah, we need to check into that.
I've checked into it, but haven't gotten a breakdown yet.
But it's funny when you ask, if you come to the meetings regularly, you will ask about the roads and what it cost, and when we approve the budget and how much we're going to put into roads, and they come back and give us these prices. Well, so I don't know if they've done this before, but it's kind of like I remember asking them to do Old North Territorial, that's Gobertson Road and North Territorial, the ditch, right around along Carl's cabin where the parking lot was flooding all the time and everything. Well, you know, they came back and gave us an estimate of $30,000 to do that. They did it, and everybody just kept calling me saying, that's a joke, that's such a ripoff, and it's like, I agree. It's just like, you know, they do the work, they insure the people, but anyway, it came back in at $8,000. Brookville Road, this was Brookville Road, Weed to Curtis. All the berming that they did, and the stonework and everything, the price was $110,000, came in at $79,000. And Brookville Road between Salem and Reed was $67,000. What they said the price would be came in at $41,000. Chubb Road, 7 Mile between 8 was $133,000, came in at $91,000. Chubb Road at 6 Mile, 7 Mile was $179,000, came in at $97,000. Beacon Lane to do the whatever it wasn't chip seal, I think it was crack sealing, wasn't it?
$35,000, came in at $27,000. Old North Territorial to repave that section was $130,000, came in at $65,000. And then the dust control, we get a discount on that, a couple thousand. But we received a check for $120,000, so that's a good thing to start off for the next year's budget, to put some more money in. So we were pretty happy to see that, so.
Started Chubb Road Farm.
Yeah, right, there you go. Put it towards the paving, right. All right, well, thank you folks for coming tonight, and start off the new year right. Remember, next month is Valentine's Day, so women, ladies, if you didn't get what you wanted for Christmas, make sure Valentine's is coming up, so. Yeah, Sherry will be here. And that's her last meeting for a while, so. Thank you, folks, and good night.